Storyberries. The House on Chicken Legs, or The Baba Yaga by Jade Maître. Beyond the thrice-nine kingdoms, in the 30th realm, beyond the fiery river, there lives the Baba Yaga. Vasilisa hesitated at the fence. It was made of human bones. Skulls on spikes leered from the top of the gate. They glowed from within like tiny, luminous flames. Behind it towered a tiny hut perched on chicken legs. It was slowly spinning as though it was scanning the ground for soft, fresh things, as though it was hunting. Vasilisa clutched her doll tightly. It was the Japanese doll her mother had given her before she died. She had called it Ribney. "Ribney," she whispered, "do I dare go in?" Ribney blinked its button eyes. Its tiny doll voice was thin as bells on a winter wind. "Look at your fingers," it said. "They are bloody from all the weaving your stepmother and stepsisters make you do. Now they force you to come to this place and fetch a lamp so that you can continue working all night. I think they are cruel to you and you ought to run away. But I am only a doll." Vasilisa stood and thought about running away. But where would she go? The forest was dark and filled with creatures that would think nothing of eating her. Her father was away for ever longer periods. There was no one in the world to help her, and she could not go home without a lamp. Trembling, she put her hand to the gate. But the door swung open before she could raise a hand to it. What a horror! An elderly woman stood staring at her. The old woman's legs were bony, bare, and sprouted with long black hairs. Her face was as withered and brown as an apple left in the sun. When she opened her mouth to laugh at the trembling Vasilisa, the girl saw her mouth was filled with iron teeth. She suddenly knew that her stepmother and stepsisters had sent her to face the fearsome Baba Yaga. The old woman stood with her arms crossed over her flat bosom. Her dark eyes were wicked and amused. "So it's a lamp you want, is it?" she said. "From the Baba Yaga? I can only presume you do not come here of your own accord." Vasilisa felt as though she looked into a mirror into which a dark stone has been thrown. She was worn as ruins, but though she should have been as frail as paper, she had an unsettling earthiness that warned of mortal danger. "We have run out of light at home," Vasilisa whispered. "Why do you need it?" Vasilisa held Ribney tightly. "I need a light to weave for my stepmother and stepsisters," she said. "And what are they doing now?" "They are asleep in bed." "Nobody needs a light when they are asleep in bed." "It is for me. I am to weave for them while they sleep." "And why is it you who weaves?" Vasilisa was startled by the question. I suppose because I'm the only one who knows how to do it," she said. "And besides, I'm too poor and ugly to get by in the world. My stepmother has told me so. All I know how to do is weave, and I must pay my way." Now, nothing could have been further from the truth. Vasilisa was what many would consider beautiful, and Baba Yaga could see it as much as anyone. But Vasilisa had been deceived in order to keep her weaving for the woman who benefited from it. The old crone looked cunning. "Come sleep in my little hut then, and I will give you a light in the morning," she said. Vasilisa looked panicked. She clutched Ribney tighter. "Oh, I couldn't." "Nonsense, you can and you will," said the old crone, and she nudged the girl with her broom, which until this moment had leaned upon the birch tree. Frightened, Vasilisa obeyed. As she passed the birch tree on the path leading up to the house, it made as though to scratch her. "Don't touch the maid," said the Baba Yaga to the tree. "It was I who brought her." Then the old woman muttered a few words, and the house on chicken legs leaned down and offered its front door to them. At hearing this, a dog came out barking, who made to bite at Vasilisa. "Don't bite the maid," said the Baba Yaga. "It was I who brought her." When they entered the front door, the house jolted one way and then the other, and once more stood on its chicken legs. Gazing from the window, Vasilisa saw they were now higher than the highest trees. An old grizzled cat was startled by this. It leapt up from the shadows and made as if to scratch Vasilisa. "Don't scratch the maid," said the Baba Yaga. "It was I who brought her here." "You see, Vasilisa," said the Baba Yaga, "you cannot escape me tonight. My cat will scratch you, my dog will bite you, and the birch tree will scratch out your eyes." Vasilisa looked out the windows and saw the little hut was now rotating as it had before. She blinked away tears. The Baba Yaga saw. "Do you want light in the morning?" the old woman snapped. Frightened, Vasilisa nodded. "Then let's eat." She clapped her old hands. "Maid, bring out the food." A maid with one heavy black eyebrow emerged, bearing dish after dish of food. There was an enormous pot of blood-red borscht, a whole roasted cow, a whole slow-cooked sow, 10 jugs of milk, 20 chickens, 40 geese, 2 whole pies, and great quantities of cider and ale, beer by the barrel and kvass by the pail. The Baba Yaga fell upon this feast with great delight, chewing and slurping loudly and moaning with pleasure at each of the flavours. When she was finished, she let fly a triumphant burp. Vasilisa gripped Ribney and did not eat until forced, and only then nibbled a little pie. She also, on the Baba Yaga's urging, put a bread roll in her pocket. When the Baba Yaga was done, the old woman wiped her withered hands and brought out a large bag. "Now, since you don't mind working into the evening, here's something for you to do tonight," she said. "This bag is filled with peas and poppy seeds. Separate them in the morning, or else I will eat you." So saying, she laughed and went to bed. Poor Vasilisa stared at the bag and did not know what to do. It would be impossible to separate the peas from the poppy seeds before the sun came up. "Dear Ribney," she whispered, "who will help me?" Ribney blinked its button eyes and made a secret call that only very small loved things can make. All the birds of the air heard the sound and came to assist. Great flocks winged through the sky and settled on the windowsill. Vasilisa let them in, and they set to work, sorting all of the peas and poppy seeds until they lay in 2 enormous piles. When they were finished, Vasilisa thanked them and promised to help them in return if she was ever able to so do it. The Baba Yaga woke in the morning, yawning like a chasm, her great bare yellow feet thumping gracelessly on the floorboards. Her hair was stuck at all angles from her head, and her face was creased in the direction she had lain her head on the pillow. "So you found some helpers," she said when she saw the piles. "Good, but you could have fixed the problem yourself." Silently, the Baba Yaga's black-browed maid emerged. She lit the stove, and Vasilisa watched, eyes wide, as the flames licked at the glass. Vasilisa was now quite sure she would be eaten, as the Baba Yaga now knew that she had not sorted the seeds alone. But the Baba Yaga sat alone at the table and began drinking hot chocolate. The drink was so thick with chocolate as to be black. She poured another for Vasilisa, which Vasilisa did not touch. After an hour, Vasilisa could not stay silent in the agony of not knowing what would happen to her. "Will you kill me now?" The Baba Yaga stared at her over the top of her mug of hot chocolate. Her owlish eyes seemed to be laughing, or perhaps yet they were appraising her flesh for its deliciousness. "Will you have your hot chocolate?" Very slowly, Vasilisa shook her head. "What is to be done with you?" she muttered, and she pushed her breakfast away. "You have angered me. I am going away now. I will certainly roast you this evening." So saying, the Baba Yaga mounted a mortar and pestle and flew over the trees, sweeping at the smoke which flew from its back as she went. Vasilisa watched her with dismay. She would be roasted tonight, and how could she possibly have solved the peas and poppy seed puzzle on her own? "Perhaps she meant that you could have told her it was impossible and refused to do it," said Ribney, with its voice of whispering snowshoes. "You could always raise your voice. But that couldn't have been it, could it?" Besides, it was obvious that such a withered and wicked hag must be hungry for the flesh of a young innocent such as Vasilisa. All the books had told her so. Vasilisa was frozen with indecision for most of the day. Finally, as the sun began to sink below the trees, she knew she was doomed and decided to take her chance at escape. "Help me," she said to the black-browed maid. "Say the words that will make the house descend, and I will give you my silk handkerchief." The black-browed maid had never had a silken handkerchief and agreed to do it. The house lurched down and she opened the door. As she flew down the garden path, the cat and dog threw themselves at her, but she threw them the bread roll from her pocket. The birch tree made to scratch her eyes out, but she tied it with her hair ribbon and it let her pass. She snatched a glowing skull from the gate and used it as a light through the darkness of the forest. Arriving home, her stepmother and stepsisters were angry. "What took you so long, stupid, ugly girl?" they said, and the light within the skull dimmed a little. They snatched the skull and set it in the room. They made her work all evening and they went to bed. The skull lamp was very soon diminished. It faded a little with every insult Vasilisa suffered until it was cold as the dead. And Vasilisa weaved day and night for her stepmother and stepsisters. She never knew the warmth of a fire, or the feel of a belly full of food, or the taste of hot chocolate. The Baba Yaga had given her a light, but Vasilisa could not see it. Could you? The end.